Wait, that was kind of a seamless rewind. That almost made it sound like it was part of the song. Wow. Where we're at. There goes that. I don't have my calculator. Oh, right. I remember. Early? What? What do you mean? How can it be early if time isn't real? You have to break free of these preconceptions? Yes, that's the right word, I think. Almost sure that's the right word. That's the word. A good word for a bad thing. Very bad. I have all these iffy ideas, you know, that society implants into us, like the grind mentality, time is real. These things are like, you know, not good. You have to get them out of your head. Also, hi Shinny, what's up? How are you doing today? That's as meta as it gets, Troy. Very good. Also, hi Troy. What's up? How are you doing today? You're dying? I'm sorry. But I mean, if you're dying, that means you're still alive, which is good. So I'm gonna take that one as a positive. I like the image you used. Thank you. It was very low effort, but it's very funny, I think. Also, hello, popular deer VTuber Toby Deer, Lana, Mr. Idle D. Hello. Thank you for I've been. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, well, I have been reporting people a bit. That's yeah. That's true. That's true. That's true. By the way, right now you're listening to a new song by Aki. You know, Aki. How do you say their name? Akihito P. Akihito. But yes, they've released a new EP, and I've actually only listened to this song, not the other one, because it has 2 tracks in it. But it's good. But it's good. How y'all doing today? I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Sorry, I was gonna get the fucking link. You can buy it right now on Bandcamp for a minimum of $1. But I would recommend more, you know? Because Bandcamp's cool like that. You get to set your own price. This skin is sick. It is sick. I like it a lot. It's very good. Yeah, that is a heavy burden for Mozart. That is a heavier burden still for us to know. Okay, what am I missing here? This is good. This is fine. This shouldn't be opened. We can close this later. Hello, gamer. What's up, Hanao? How you doing? I like the name change, by the way. It's very cute. What am I looking for? Everything's fine. Other deer. If his dick slappeth when he walk, I shall listen when he talk. Wow. Holy shit. That is powerful. What the fuck? Damn. That, you know, that one's gonna... that one's going down in history. You know? Just as surely as many people are going down on those aforementioned individuals, for whom the dick of Anyway, what's up, guys? How everyone? How's everyone doing today? I'm seeing the funny stuff in my eyes now because I wheezed too hard. Thank you so much. That definitely needs to be in the quotes. Also, hi Golf, what's up? How you doing? Okay. I'm ready. I have not played tank in a while. Because I've been playing DPS. A little bit. No, it doesn't. You know, it doesn't go very well. It doesn't go very well typically, but you know, I have fun. For whom the dick slappeth. Honestly, like you know, people just don't appreciate like the poetry anymore, you know? And it's shocking because like with things like that out there, with things like that being said, it really makes you think like how can you not just look at that and be moved to tears? It's so powerful. It's just on another level. Little sunburn, but good. I mean, I think, all things considered, you know, if you told me you got like electrical burns, I would be more concerned. And I feel like that would be more to be expected, considering what we know of you. But yeah, you know, sun is nice, allegedly. I'm not a fan, but... That's great, Shinny. Honestly, that is great. I'm not reading that one out loud, but you know, that's also pretty powerful. Vitamin D from the sun. Everyone is getting their bells tolled today, it seems like. Oh my god, I don't remember how to play this game actually. Vitamin Dick. I'm so proud of you guys. I'm so honored to be in the company of such like cultured and eloquent individuals. It's like, man, it's heartwarming. It's great. Hello, team. Hello. Sun gives vitamin dick? That is correct. That's why it's called D. That's why it's called Sunny Delight. You know? Okay.
That's a throat on me.
Very unfortunate.
Okay, I'm not gonna chase it. Little fucking...
Ryan spinning left. Hog no heal, left side. Where is with the hog indoors? Left side. Hog no hook. Get you into the flag. On me. Left. Why do I keep going inside of things? You know? Horrible. 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 Are we winning this? Perhaps? Perhaps? perhaps. Nice mutual kill, very romantic. Love to see love bloom in the battlefield. Are so educated, so true, so true. Honestly, so fucking true. Kinda close. I don't know, sleep. That hurt a little bit. That hurt a little bit. That hurt a little bit. Time to sleep. You know, nothing like the you know, a nice little. I know I'm not gonna say a nice little glass of pee milk before you go to sleep. I don't think that's appropriate.
I don't know.
I don't think that's appropriate for me to say.
We need a for my free.
But good night, Cass. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate you. I hope you sleep well. Fuck. Wait, what? Genji left? Bob's away. Never mind. Ryan spinning right side. Ryan's half. My god. There's a lot going on in chat now. And I'm a little bit glad that I'm not keeping up with it entirely. Ball's closed left side. Okay. Interesting. Are they keeping the Genji? Seems like it. That is pretty interesting.
Left side follow. As one.
Ryan's half. Genji close, top left. Ball's close left. Ryan close under, bottom right. Spinning away. No, my window! Unlucky. Hot dog water is just lactose-free pee milk. You know, this is entering the territory of science, which I am definitely not qualified to speak on. That is very unfortunate, I have to say. Quite unfortunate. No, let me pin. I'm so sad. I'm so sad. The Genji's half on the left. You know? It really do be like that. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. I don't think I was doing much on Reinhardt, I think.
Score 0対2サイドを交代します。間もなく突入し
Limp Bizkit. That's terrifying flashbacks. I would not like that. I'm uncomfortable enough with my own flashbacks, honestly. But yeah, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. Okay, he wants to. All right, we're swapping roles then. I think we should call millennials humors, like they should have been. Humors. I feel like there's some context I'm missing here. Why humors? Where does that come from? Wait, why do you call zoomers zoomers? Also, but there's some list of people whose penis I've seen against my will and were disappointed by. There's a list? Memory's so bad when I have flashbacks and I'm just like, oh, new lore. Generation Y. Ah, I see. Humors. I did not know it's called Generation Y. That's interesting. Generation Z. I see. I see. That is going to be painful. Why am I on Zarya, actually? I should have been Sigma. That is very unfortunate. That's also very unfortunate. On the bright side, they used Lamp already. This guy's really just living. Very cool. Very cool. There's the whole list. Ah, of course, an important distinction for sure.
Go, go, go.
Okay, 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 okay. Okay, okay.
Last one. Get back. Don't pick.
Don't go left side. Don't go left side.
Don't peek. Wow.
Okay. You know, it'd be like that. What can you do? I think that's a tank duo, actually. Alright, they wasted Shadow. That's pretty good. That's less good. That's less good. That's less good. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, fair enough.
Okay, let's go right side then. But
Why are we not going left side? Is it because of the Sigma? This is new to me. Ow, that shit hurted. This is interesting. This is more interesting. Okay. That's huge. On a stop right, I think. Yep. That one. I can't believe I missed that. Never mind. No one saw that. This is very unfortunate. No way. But yeah, I still hit him. Let's go. Sig's low. What the fuck? Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm waking up. That was for me, but you know, that's fine. Better the Genji take it than me. Very cool, very cool, very cool, very cool, very cool, very cool, very cool. That almost killed me. I'm not a fan of this Genji. What? Okay.
Genji bang.
Oh dear. This guy's having way too much fun on Genji than it should be allowed on this day and age.
can we change Echo?
I heard change, but that was all I heard. Hi Narbs! Welcome! How was the Minecraft stream? Very cool. Also very cool.
How?
How?
So fast. I was not.
Way too much fun. It shouldn't be allowed. He's Genji. In 2021. Time isn't real, guys. Remember that. Hello, Baptiste. Okay, that is very unfortunate. That is even more unfortunate. Okay. I don't think we're in this. Nice Shadow though. Fantastic usage of the Shadow ultimate. Alright, that looks good. This is unfortunate. Oh, this is more unfortunate. You don't love to see it. You really don't love to see it. Oh well. Not epic. When Cave Valiant fucking died, sometimes you have to die before you can pog. You know? That's the law of nature. You do a little dwelling, you do a little dying. Hello, Genji Overwatch. Fantastic.
Why don't we not have a McCree yet?
Why don't we have a McCree yet? Interesting question. These are the questions that keep me up at night. You know?
They have ball and treasure.
And Genji. And
Genji and Echo.
probably other things that McCree would counter, maybe. I wouldn't know. I don't play this game. I don't know what a counter is.
Not much risk.
Why are you not changing?
Why do people ask stuff like this, you know? It's interesting. You ever think about it? Like it really doesn't do anything. You know? It's like asking like why you did the thing. Like when people make a mistake. You know? And then people ask like, why did you do that? It's like, why are you asking that? It's such an interesting question. He's been asking for change all game, you know? So have we, the people of the United States of America. We need change. It is imperative. Probably gonna play a bunch of different games on stream over the next week, and until I find something that feels right to stream. That's good. Experimentation. It's very good. It's very good. And also, even if you don't find, you can just keep fucking just playing whatever. You know? Nothing wrong with that either. Change starts with yourself. So true. So true. So true. So true. So true. There's a joke on the roof. My god. Do you guys see that? Do you guys see the can you guys see the roof? Can you guys see the roof? Cause I think there's a joke up there. Hello Grimory, how are you doing? Change starts with C? What if you can't spell? What then? Huh? Is it on fire? I mean, it probably will be if there's a junk up there, right? That would make sense for the room to catch fire. For the roof. Sorry.
Hello guys.
Hello team. Hello. Oh yeah, I forgot to endorse my esteemed teammates. There we go. I have to design a new profile picture. That's exciting. Honestly, that was the most exciting thing for me when I started streaming, was like making stuff, like assets and all that. It's part of the reason why I started, honestly. Like, real talk, one of the main reasons why I started streaming was just so I can practice that type of like thing making. You know? Is that the same Genji? There's no way. He's playing the PAS. He shouldn't be having a Q this fast. That Reinhardt is on life support. Okay. Okay. Ren's one. Ren's doing a little bit of trolling. Ren is doing a little bit of trolling. Sorry to our Genji, to our Hanzo, but I'm built different. I shoot deflects. I don't give a fuck. I give a little bit of a fuck, to be fair. Mine. Oh dear. Mine! No! Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. We in it? We kind of are. Fascinating. My shield was still down. That is very unfortunate. Thank you, Troy. It is a nice shirt. I agree. I'm glad you like it too. No, Shinny. No. No. Oh, that's that's oof. That is also a no. I would say. I'm not going in there. I'm not going in there. It is not the same Genji. Interesting. That's two Genjis having too much fun. It's too much fun being had by two Genjis already. I don't appreciate this very much. The fuck?
Fuck, I'm sorry. Oh, nice.
Give us love. For now what? Getting bullied in the— oh, I remember that. Did that happen? I feel like that happened. If it didn't, they used to call me two Primal Winstons. What happened? Oh dear. Ryan's half? What the fuck? Wait. Oh, he's main? What the hell? Oh dear. Okay. What is happening up there? Lucy on point. Going for a widow, going for a widow. He said that's not a command, so I said for now. I didn't say it wasn't a command, I just said no. I didn't specify what the no was. Genji won. Should swap after that? Why? I mean, they do have Genji and Diva, but they don't seem to be doing much. Which is funny. It makes you think that like the Lucio did more to counter our Widow than the rest of the team that could counter him. Ryan in the air. Lucio low. Ryan's one. The dragon was an interesting use for sure. Bees? 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 Oh no, Ana. Oh no. Unfortunate. Hello. Uh-huh. So true. Genji's have? Very cool. No, Diva's half. Jesus Christ, he got shattered and rocked. And a one. Fuck. God damn it. Wait, cursed? What do you mean cursed? It's so cute. I'm kind of offended that you think that's cursed. My god, I'm not good at this. Oh wait, I blocked that. Don't. Oh my god. Our Tracer kind of went sicko mode there. Dude, if we still win this, this is like ult. Oh my god. Oh my. There's no way. Fucking 2 CP Omega lol. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Absolutely fucking incredible. Not gonna work a second time, or third time actually. That was a nice block of the Devo. Completely intentional. Completely intentional. But thank you.
Yeah, that's right. What are we going with? I see, I see, I see. Okay, okay. Okay.
問題でもあるのか、ジャンクラート。
Sorry I'm being like quiet a bit today. I'm like readjusting to I don't know what. I'm just readjusting in general, you know? Okay.
5、4、3、2、1。突入開始。目標 A を確保。
Interesting, interesting, interesting. They have a Junkrat. Mind spinning points. He's half. They use lamp on him, but he's really low. Junk low. So true. So true.
Tank on the left side. Tank on the left.
So true. Are we getting left?
I'm coming, guys.
Okay, okay. Oh, they lost one. Unfortunate.
You wanna go left side? I'm coming.
No. Ryan's one. Unfortunate. Almost.
Let's just go to the main entrance, I guess.
Oh,
Maybe you can TP on top of the point.
Yeah,
he has the cool skin. Let's go.
that's what I meant.
So true, bestie. So true, bestie. So true, bestie.
テレポーター利用可能敵を道を
Jesus Christ. Well, we're kind of milking their ults here, I guess. And we got a take. That's pretty interesting.
Let's just try it again.
Yeah, we have enough time, so.
A gold gun to get. Bastion. All of them? Yeah, of course, eventually.
Try it again if you want,
But, you know.
Guys, sorry.
さようなら
Oh yeah, sorry.
これで持ちこたえろ
Which one first? Bastion.
身を隠せ
Come on, guys.
Reaper, can you come here?
Having a good time here.
Reaper, 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 Reaper.
I'm having a great time, actually.
扉は開
We take so long, they can always, like, tell that we're coming. Okay. Okay.
敵を発見
Okay. What the fuck? There's a Kree up top behind us? Very unfortunate. Okay, okay, okay. This is so funny. Holy shit.
よろしく
頼もう
I know, maybe top right? Should we go top right?
Oh, okay.
バリア展開
But hey, we're trying different stuff, you know? You gotta respect that.
そなた
Nice shatter, buddy.
Right out.
強化完了
I thought we were rushing in too far.
Very unfortunate. Please, let's fucking go. Kree's behind us in the bridge. Main. Did he hold that entire time? Holy shit. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, maybe? Maybe?
-1.
Question mark?
Oh, come on.
Ryan half. May one, May one, May one. Jeez, nice block. Ryan's low. Dig, grab.
トリプルキル
Nice, good job, guys.
Yes.
勝利
Holy shit. What the fuck was that? This is the dumbest game. That was so stupid, but so funny at the same time. Cause like, we took so long to fucking get it every time. Fucking hell. Too tired to watch? Get some good rest, Narbs. That's totally fine. Go get some sleep. Oh shoot. Oh yeah, also guys, Wednesday I'm gonna be streaming Warframe again. Cause I'm slowly getting back into it, and with good timing because TanoCon is this weekend. So that's cool. And they're going to actually be announcing exciting new things. And then on Friday, Outer Wilds again. And we're gonna be making big progress because I figured out I mean, I didn't figure it out. I already knew how. I just hadn't tried it yet. How to get on the moon. The quantum moon, that is. I've double checked my theory because it was haunting me while I was offline. And I've confirmed that it works. So we're going there next. I got into an Apex Summit with a Portuguese pro player. Wow, that won that shit for you. I could kiss you right now. I could kiss you right now, Kurli. Thank you so much for that. Huge. That is massive. Thank you so much. Holy shit. Rapping hell yes.
Coming, babies.
Alright.
Dev monkey. Hi, Matthew. I'm here.
Monkey top left. Doing the same thing at the same time. Perfectly synchronized. Okay. Okay. This is very weird. I didn't mean to do that. That was strange. Can I get him from up here? From down here, I mean? Kinda. I'm dropping a point. I don't know, sleep.
Drop down, drop down.
The fuck?
See with me?
You got a wide-hearted monitor now? No. Xeno personal. She's half. She's one. I'm dead. Oh wait, no, I'm not. I dropped a shield behind me. Wow. I have brain sometimes. Fascinating. Who said that? Looky into it? Of course.
We'll keep him, we'll keep him. Yeah, let him go.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
I can't see you, Kree.
That was too deep. Who said that? That was the Pharah.
Zarya one.
Still one.
Oh no. Wait, they have a Widow now. Wait, that's good for me. Oh, wait, they have no more Sombra. Let's fucking go. The fuck? Why am I here? Why am I here? Literally, why am I here? That was so stupid. Holy shit.
You can have, you can have.
Should be banned for that joke. I literally don't even understand it. What? Wait. The roto popped off. Okay.
It's okay. Wait. We don't need to lose hop.
All right. There we go. You got your wish. Rip, Shinny. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Also interesting. Less interesting, perhaps. Also, hi mom, what's up? How are you doing? I could have primal there, but I'm not sure if it was worth I was alone. Bonk. Okay, we have our own Widow now. I see. What the fuck was that jump, dude? I'm on some shit right now. I'm not gonna lie. I'm enjoying life a lot. I'm gonna be real with you. I'm really enjoying life. Fuck. Bro, I don't know where they are. Let's fucking go. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing. The Mercy's just pocketing the sand. Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. That's poggers. That is very poggers.
隠れても無駄よ。
こんにちは。通ります。
Konnichiwa. Fuck off, bro. Okay. Sure. Okay. Okay. No way. Well, I mean, okay.
敵が戦線に復帰
One on me.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
We're in your back, we're in your back.
バリア展開。
Okay. No, the bubble. Ah! Ah! Motherfucker. On God? On God.
ナノブーストを投与。
Really? They have a Reaper now instead of a Widow. I
もう一度。
You're alone.
don't know how to feel about that. I don't know how to feel about that, to be honest. Because I'm not being that much of an issue. It's like I kill her once and she gets tilted. Okay.
バリア起動。
Oh,
Massive. He misclicked, poor guy. It happens. Okay. Okay.
Break level.
Oh my god. He was so low. Let's fucking go.
バリア起動。
Stop bubbling the fucking Zen, bro. So cringe. Stop playing the game. Literally just stop. Let me win. Thank you.
kill him, Rick, kill him, kill him.
What? Okay, dude. Okay. Sure.
時間です。このまま守り抜きますよ。
So true. Oh shit. My ass. Okay. We're fine.
元気が出ます。
She did say get solo grabbed. Very unpoggers of her, to be honest.
残り10秒。
私の見立てによると、防衛層を維持
Oh dear. Oh my god. Starship to Overwatch. Hello. Oh god. No, please no. Please no. Let me kill something. Oh, yeah. Fuck. Thank you for the raid star. Hello. Ablaz. I don't know why I read that as if it's a Portuguese word, but thank you for the follow. Thank you for the raid star. How are you doing? How was the stream? Oh my god, wait, that's a lot of names. Wait, hold on. I say a lot as if it's not 3, but...
Fuck, River behind you.
Okay, guys, give me a second. On God Almighty. On God Almighty. Holy shit, I'm sorry guys, I am doing the video game. I'll be paying attention in a second. Okay, I punched the Reaper. Let's fucking go.
完了。
Uro's track and Kaisuka, thank you guys for following, much appreciated. Welcome everyone from Stars Raid. I'm Shanzikull. I'm a
ヒーロー。
Overwatch variety streamer. Yeah, we're just playing some wholesome, chill, lo-fi hip-hop Overwatch to relax and play Dragon's Dogma too. That's right, Shinny. Very good. Thank you for keeping me on track. Ah, shit. Hello. Welcome, everyone. I'm sorry. Let me scroll here. Did I miss anything? Shanzio. Fuck. I shouldn't do this. I knew it was gonna, like, backfire on me. Games not so much. Yeah, I feel
あ
that.
と30秒。
Sweaty gamer times. It is such a big change in temperature when I have to stream with my door closed. I don't like it.
オーバーウォッチを必要として
That's what you get, bestie. It is what I get, you know. It's only fair. It's only fair. It's only fair. I you know,
5、4、3、
I respect it. Thank you. Yes.
突入開始。
The words never heard them.
レイロードをご覧ください。
Anyway, wait, they have the Reinhardt on Gibraltar. Very interesting.
What happened?
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm just gonna be pushing the payload, I guess. Are you manky? I'm manky too much. I'm too manky. I am too much manky. That is. Oh my god. Oh fuck. Yo, I can kind of beam him from here. I didn't know that. Okay. Okay.
Go high ground, go high ground.
Okay. Too much manky. Okay, the Bob's asleep. How do you put a robot to sleep? Oh god. Oh god. Okay. What the fuck is happening? They're all on the payload. Oh. Sure. Oh, not sure, not sure, not sure, not sure, not sure. Fuck. Oh dear. Oh my. Does Saudi do well on Winston? I'm not doing shit on Winston.
Come back.
He was on Widow. First he was Sombra, then he went Widow. I killed him once, and he switched the Reaper. It was very.
Can you help, please?
It's very interesting. Hello, it's me, Monkey Overwatch. Oh my, no way. Please let me up. Please let me up. Okay. 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 That one. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go.
Oh, fuck.
Oh my goodness. Oh my. Okay. Wait, what the fuck? The Reinhardt is alive. Okay. Very interesting video game.
I'm grab.
I can nano monkey.
I'm monkey Genji.
Okay. 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 Oh, not okay. Not okay. Oh my god, that is so not okay. Ooh, wow. That hurts. Oh dear me.
Come back quick.
Oh dear. Okay. Okay, we're good. We're good. We're good. I don't know how we will be good, but we will be good. Reaper CPing top left, blue box. So I know Ala Bubble. Okay, okay.
You can drop monkey. You can drop, I can nano.
On God, I did not even fucking see where she was. She just boops me from God knows where. Break a half. Again? Lamps down, lamps down. Oh, it hurts so bad.
No way.
You know?
Focus Reaper.
I can't focus shit right now. I don't know what I'm looking at. God. We win this. We win this. What the fuck happened? No. Stop. Stop being alive. And this is too much monkey energy. We get water in the bathroom. Be absolutely. Have a safe journey to the bathroom. Be cautious.
I can't see you, Diva. I can't see you.
You never know what dangers lurk in the corner. What the fuck? Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. That is an entire enemy team. That is a Roadhog. What the fuck? Hog half?
Dash behind on me.
Flash in the back still.
Again? Again?
Reset.
My shield just came back.
Let's come up.
The distress in your voice. It is joy, actually. I am ecstatic. And static, you know? Not as in not moving, but as in the thing that TV does, you know? When the channel's all fucked. Joy stress. Absolutely.
Just wait.
Absolutely. I am waiting. Silently.
Hokage.
That is very unfortunate. That is exceedingly unfortunate. Oh, that is okay. Wait, we had a bob out? I straight up did not even realize.
Go back. I have blade. Go back. Please go back.
Okay, backing, we're backing apparently. We're backing.
Use your ult, Monkey. Use your ult and go back.
Come back. Maybe go back. Nice.
Holy shit, what is happening?
Just don't peek.
The Reaper's nanoed. Oh, fuck.
Sorry.
I exploded in that grab.
Nice, window.
Reaper no right.
Reaper first. Ball.
Ball, I'm with you.
I'm good for big.
What was that? Hog no hook. Well, how does he get beat? He is a music enthusiast. Hog no heal. Hog no hook. Reaper behind. Be careful.
Reaper on me.
Nice, huge. No way the Bob's still behind us. The Bob is still behind. No. I was 75. I was 20. I don't know how to count. I was 75% ult.
Nice.
Oh my god. No. So close.
Okay.
So close. Holy shit. I need a second here. I need a second. My god. Holy shit, wait. I need to point this at me also. My... Okay, that's better. Ah. Okay. Whew. What a game. What a game. Jesus Christ. Holy shit. That Ashe, was it the Ashe? I feel like there was a lot of I feel like there was definitely a lot of Roses are red, violets are blue. Widow's cute. Thank you, Next to Games, and thank you for the follow as well. What a combo. You drop a pickup line and a follow at the same time. That's respectable, you know? That's good. That's a pog champ, as they say. Combo breaker. Was it a combo breaker? I don't think that was a combo itself, not a breaker. Yeah, you broke nothing. If anything, you mended My broken heart. That is terrible. My heart's not broken. Was it a 2 combo? That is still a combo. Sometimes it's all you need. You know? Sometimes 2 hits in a combo is all you need. Look at Doomfist. He only needs 1. He does a 1-hit combo and you're dead. How about that? Technology has come so far. But welcome. Thank you for Wait, were you here from Stars Raid? Your name somehow sounds familiar. Also because they're like words, but you get what I'm saying. Okay. Thank you for the sub. That was quick. 3 combo. True. True. Was it easy?
Hey boys. How you doing?
Hey boys. Hello team.
Let's go.
Let's go. Let's fucking go. Anami's Jesus Christ.
Just
don't
play around Tracer. Symmetra.
Just play around Symmetra. Sounds like a plan. Are you on God though? Like, are you okay? Don't sub to people if you can't. So we'll go back to questioning my choice, like playing main tank along with an Overwatch.
Everyone.
Yo, me too.
Boys.
Hello, hello.
I do that as well. But I don't question it. I just go with it. Where are we going? Okay.
Let's go.
Okay, let's go, let's go. Following Symmetra.
Where's
Alright,
Symmetra?
alright.
Following Symmetra to a teeth. To her teeth. She has lovely teeth. Doom behind. He's hit. No, he's not. Oh my god. What is happening? Ryan shield down. I'm in pain.
I'm behind you.
Okay. There sure was a Ryan behind me. Okay. Okay.
I need some heal. Yeah.
Oh, you're behind me.
Wow.
Maybe get a brig instead of Mazan.
My shield's weak, be careful.
I need some heal.
Oh my god.
Go on.
Going point, going point, going point. Wow! I hit something there. Ryan's on point. He's half. He's 1. I was 0.
Mercy one.
I'm going to go to Battlefield Dizzy and really sleepy, of course. Of course. Thank you for the raid. Sleep well.
Kill me.
Hope you'll feel better. I just give up on main tank alone, especially because I can't remember how to main. I never knew how to main tank. So I'm 15 steps in some direction. I don't know if it's ahead.
Come back, guys.
Okay, coming back.
Wait.
Okay. You're close.
Careful, Hanzo.
I exploded. I just sent my ass into the enemy team and hope it works out. That's a good plan, you know? I like that plan. I should do that more. Oh dear. Lucy's on point still. He's coming behind us.
Slow.
Okay. I blocked that. Fuck off. I think I actually pressed the wrong mouse button. That's incredible. Zeph! Hello! How are you doing?
They're coming top.
Is there no donate button anymore? There never was.
I'm going.
Okay. I never set up. Okay. I never set up the donation thing.
Fuck my face.
Love the jack. It sounds very cool.
heal. We don't have heal. We have 1% heal. Come back, come back.
Backing up, backing up. Oh dear. Oh dear.
Swap off then, there's not enough healing when the Ana dies.
Wait, guys, you need to wait. Ana behind you, Ana behind you.
Oh shit.
Guys, you need to watch.
Very unfortunate.
Why would you go in when we don't have healer? I just don't understand.
Very good question. Very good question. Why did I go in when we had no healers?
The game sense.
Such a game sense thing, you know? Oh, that's actually pretty big. Okay. That was a big anti, but unfortunate.
Like, honestly, man. Oh, Ana died and our Zen dead and our tanks just go directly to point.
So true. So
Heal's
true.
probably trying to play a bit more with the team as well.
So true.
You seem to just getting picked on your own.
You know?
They get picked, we just wait. We wait them to join. You don't just go fucking fight them.
Thank you, Lana. Good reminder.
You're melting so easily.
You're just gonna explode? I'm gonna explode anyway. I'm playing tank. You know? I'm just gonna explode no matter what. Oh my.
He's decent on fire.
That's me.
Very secret. I was gonna say secret donation. What the fuck? 5. Jesus, that's a number. Thank you, Zeph. Holy shit. Okay. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Oh, shit! I didn't know the Hanzo was there. Oh my god, that is a lot of sound. I love you too, Zeph. What the fuck? Thank you. Jesus, I wasn't expecting that. Why is our Farah, whose name is Genji only?
Mostly, let's just go fight to the Hanzo. They have nothing to counter us.
Big anti, both tanks. Hog no hook.
Watch out for Shadow.
For rest.
We in it? Oh my god, thank you, Mercy. Hog's behind us, be careful.
Big.
Nice.
Coming big.
Thank you for the lurk. Next to games.
Let's go kill that Hanzo.
Oh my god, very epic and based. PogChamp. What the... Where was she? What? Top, Ash and Hanzo?
Fucking game-ish.
Oh my god, Troy, Jesus Christ.
He shot below.
Come back, Ana.
Okay,
That's unfortunate.
I am overloading right now a little bit. I'm sorry. Thank you, Troy. Thank you for the gift.
Have to focus the
Interesting beat usage.
Hanzo actually.
Okay. We're fine. How are you doing, Zeph? How's the wife and kids? Why are there rattlesnakes in this man's house? Get fucked, Genji.
Ash is getting pocket.
Reloading.
That is very unfortunate.
You have no hits for 3 seconds.
I can hear this guy's whole house.
Literally 1 HP.
I can hear this guy's entire household.
Okay. You can't push the point when they're DPS behind of them.
Yeah.
Okay, last fight.
What
Let's
the?
just go left side, guys.
What the fuck? Is he okay, dude? Really? What are these dragons?
I shot at you, but
Yeah.
that guy.
GG.
GG?
チームキル
Interesting game for sure. This guy, where was he? This guy, I wish I could give him like a family-sized shot caller, because it should go to his entire family. They were all contributing to the comms for sure. That was so like overwhelming. I kept hearing like the faucet in the background and like metal sounds. Like, Jesus. Could you guys like, was it too audible on the stream? I'm sorry if it was. Holy shit. Okay, that was like a tiny, very noisy sip. I don't know why I did it. I don't know why I did it like that, but he was blasting. Bro, he was showering. Someone was showering in his house. Actually, I think they were like washing the dishes or something. It sounded like water for sure, but okay. Deep breaths. Deep breaths. We're okay. We're okay. We're okay. Okay. Thank you guys again for the gifteds. What the fuck? What the fuck? Okay. Nice. I don't know if you meant to reply to Troy with that, Lana, but it the way it lined up was, you did beautiful, fantastic work. I wasn't. My bad. My bad, dude. It was an accident. My bad. It's okay, Cordy. Don't worry about it. Okay, dude. Okay, dude. Wait, Shinny, are you here? Shinny posted a selfie in the selfies channel on Discord. He looks so handsome. What the dude? Look at that hair. Holy shit. What the fuck? Awooga. Yeah. Damn. Jesus, dude. Okay. Okay. There's the sparkly heart. I have to put my two appreciation, selfie appreciation emotes. Or is it? Fuck. Okay, there it is. Has to be that. Whose mom did I accidentally fuck anyways? It gets hard to keep track, does it? I don't know. I made my voice sound like that. That was weird. But it was our DPS player, you know? Had a very you know, it's interesting, like, he was giving definitely a new meaning to open mic, you know? Like, there's open mics and then there's wide open mics. He's getting in the way, tell her to leave. In the way to what? Who's Steve Jobs? Okay. That guy's clearly named Chuck. Who's named Chuck? My face went Chuck. Feels bad. I'm gonna let you work this one out. Nope. No clue. Sorry. Hello, team. I'm born into the world. Named Chuck. Doesn't elaborate. Leaves. So true. So true. So true. Yee. Very cool. Okay. 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 What the fuck? Oh my god. Okay, you know what? What can I say? What can I say? Outplayed. Outplayed. So true. They were hog killed both of our tanks by hooking them off. Very cool. Pee pee poo poo. Everyone does it. His good name is Chuck. Fuck, it's not me. Oh, I get it. I get it now. I see. I see. I see. I see. I see. Can we? Okay. Ryan's half. You know? Why not? Right? Yo! They're popping off, dude. They're popping off. Okay. 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 That hurts. Okay, I killed something. Let's go. I have no idea what's happening. I legitimately couldn't even see a fucking thing on my screen. Oh my god. Wait. Winnable? Winnable, perhaps? Winnable, perhaps? Oh my god, we're popping. Oh my god, we're gaming. Our team's not on the point, but you know. Okay, dude. Okay. 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 Also okay. Very okay. Okay, champ. Where the fuck? What? Get it, Ryan's low. How the fuck? Okay. Okay, dude. Okay. Learned something new today. Shadow doesn't go that far. Wow. I did not know. Unlucky. Christ. Very interesting games today, I have to say. Ah, Jesus. Okay. 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 Hmm. Alright. I feel like I'm like half asleep somehow. There's so much going on. I'm sweating. But I feel like I'm not entirely awake. It's very weird. Okay, Sig Orisa. I see. I see. I see. I see. I see. Okay. 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 This might be difficult. This might be a little bit difficult. Gain a point. Okay. Alright, our Zarya just killed everything. Very cool. Love to see it. They give up on the Sig. Why? Alright. Orisa stopped left alone. What the fuck is she doing? She's half no gold. What the fuck was that? Bro, that horse is getting back to the Wild West. So weird. Now they have Hog. Okay. Fascinating, honestly. Incredible turn of events. Okay. Okay. Oh my god, McCree. Okay. That's pretty big. It's pretty funny. Oh no! I thought he would hook me, to be honest with you. Lucy on point? Ooh, I missed. Call the Mac. Unlucky. God. I wasted that shatter. I don't know why I did that. I think I just wanted to get revenge for the environmental kill Lucy got on me. Hello. Okay. Okay. Oh, I was 1 health. Very interesting. What is happening? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. 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 Oh, thank you. Every other has been popping today. Is that the trend for today? Zarya's popping. That would be an interesting trend. Oh, the deflect duel. Very, very cool anime moment. Okay. 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 Get you on point. Please. Let's go. So true. That misses her? That misses her? What the fuck? This game's physics are like out of this world. Incredible. Not doing well today in game. Solution. Don't focus on the bad. Good advice. Good advice. Focus on the now. So true. Not the past. Very true. My god, inspirational, truly. Okay. Yeah, do you have? Love that. Love that. I'm going monkey, actually. Okay.
目標がアクティブになりました
Japanese sound pack? Yes. I mean, it's not a. Well, is it? Does it count as a sound pack? It is the game in Japanese. But it's not like an extra, you can just change it in the settings. Though I guess you technically do have to download the files, I think. I actually forget how it works. I haven't done it in a while. The fuck, dude? Where is he? Okay. Ball low. You can download the file in the battle line? Yes! True. I forgot. It's like Genshin. Wait, but yeah, it does give you like a little bit of a. You have to download it, right? Okay, that's a Reinhardt. Okay. Sure. But yeah, I've done it quite a. I can't even remember at this point how long it's been, but I haven't changed it since. Ball's behind us. Oh, is it the fucking do my dailies in Genshin? So true. Mine's half. Okay, where am I? Big anti. Lucy 1. Hello, Reinhardt. Are we not on point? Okay. It's like, who the fuck is still there? It was the ball. The ball character. Wait, dude, how can I see? Okay, dude. Alright. Good luck on your dailies, Shinny. Not that you need help or luck or anything. Because I know you're a god gamer. Okay. I don't know why. I don't know why we're doing this. This is so cringe. Okay. Fuck. Why did the beat have to come now? Unfortunate. Thank you, Mercy. Okay. Okay. Ball's behind. Okay. Where is he? What the fuck? Ryan spinning point. I don't want. Big anti. Ryan's 1. Have a Reaper now. He's touching. Interesting. Fascinating, even. I should say. Nice. Good job, guys. GG. What the fuck? I'm a tired wanting to die gamer though, so I'll take the luck. You know, luck is always good. That's a true thing. Luck helps everyone, even if you feel like you don't need it. Luck always comes in handy. Haha, handy. Funny. God. Speaking of luck, once I start playing Warframe again, that's gonna start hitting as well. The RNG. Let's fucking go. Tap to giggle at your handy joke with you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Fucking hell. Hi, Aura. How you doing? Oh dear.
この傷があってこそ今の自分がいるのだ。スコア更新を目指しましょう。
What do they have? Is that a tracer? Interesting. Good, glad to hear it. I'm doing really good myself. It's gonna be another full week.
5, 4, 3, 2,
both, you know, in terms of streaming and other stuff. So I'm excited. I'm excited.
力を合わせれば不可能などありません。
Things are good.
バリア起動。
Oh my fucking god, a Torb double shield. I don't like this. I don't like this. Okay, dude. Okay, dude. Okay, dude. Okay, dude. Tracer low. Oh, fuck. Okay. 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 I should not be on this. Do I try to go horse here?
You switch off Widow, I switch as well. Yeah. Need more damage, my guy.
Can do this.
Widow, do you play Pharah?
Shield down. Signal rock, horizontal goal. Big pulse. Christ, that is a lot of ults.
I'll see you, Ryan.
Unfortunate. But yeah, doing good. Thank you for asking. What the fuck, bro? Who even puts a turret up there?
Tracer behind now. What's this with this Torb?
Torb is a problem, for sure. They res the Torb. Fascinating. Fuck off. Tracer behind, right side. Reasonable pull, signal rock. Tracer behind, on Orana. Nice, nice, nice. Tracer's gonna be left side. She's backing out. On a far top left. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, 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 okay. We're pogging, we're pogging, we're pogging. Oh my god. Nice. Turret, far right. All on the right, all on the right. Reasonable goal. Supports and Torb are right side here. Dude, what is this? I fucked up. Let's fucking go. Sig bottom right, he's cut off, half. He's still here. Nice. Torb hit, bottom right. Mercy's with Torb, Mercy's with Torb. She's resing Sig. Torb's half. Big, big, big.
Who is the low?
Signal rock. Tracer on point, Tracer on point. Left side, no recall. Tracer behind still. Nice. Nice. They went Kree. Let's fucking go. And hog instead of Sig. Let's fucking go. Goodbye. No! Fucking slapped my rock. God damn it. What? Thank you, Mercy. 3-1. Tracer's alive. Tracer 1. We're fine, recap. Holy shit. They have Ash now, no Mercury. God. Phew. Friends in the air. Ash top left with Mercy. Tracer close. On our soldier. Ash top left still, be careful. Nice. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. Oh dear. Tracer bottom right. No recall. Ball behind. Ball's anti-ed. Tracer half. Tracer no recall. Another nade. Preload. 3-1. Tracer behind. Nice. Tracer 1. There's no recall. Tracer behind. Tracer low, bottom right. Bro, moment. Tracer behind. Free bottom right. Leave a half. Dude. Doom half, Doom one. Leave a left side. Nice shadow. Nice, good job, guys. Holy shit. God damn. Their DPS is saying DPS diff. That's... You know, sometimes I want to say that when I play DPS.
Can you pocket me again with Mercy, please?
Okay.
Or I can go eco.
I mean, if you go Echo, that's still good to have a pocket with. Oh, alright. So true. What?
I'm fixing my pillow.
4, 3, 2,
Do you have a pillow?
Yeah. And blankets.
That's gaming.
Laying in bed? What are you doing?
No.
It's a gamer pose, dude. It's the setup. You gotta have pillows. How else are you gonna aim? There's a Kree on the right side in the alley. Hog no hook. Kree still right indoors.
Sitting on is probably the worst share you could have while playing games.
I have an amazing share, but my left arm started hurt.
Let's go.
So I got it a pill. And it's a leather share, and I hate when the skin stinks, but so I need to sit on it.
Okay, that makes sense actually.
Widow far bottom left, be careful. My shield's really weak. I'm letting it recharge.
Press and Ash.
Ryan spinning in. He's half. He's one. That was interesting behavior from their Reinhardt. I have no nade right now. Sig's way pushed up.
They go around the corner because of the widow.
When the second
Shield
thing
down.
is back, I'll gonna play it, okay?
No rest yet. 3 seconds.
Ryan's half.
Ready?
That was a bot.
Oh, my bad. Ryan's behind. More behind. More half. Tanks in the air. Tanks half. Sig one. Ryan's behind. Ryan's one. Nice. Nice. Okay. Widow's far bottom left.
Anna, shoot me.
Sig right side in a rock. Dear. Oh dear. Orion's in trouble. Can't help you, Mercy. Sig's low. My shield's down. Sig no rock. Widow's left side top. Care. Ryan spinning in. He's in our back. He's anti. He's half. He's one. Never mind. He's not one. He's one now. Ryan half. I'm on point one. We're on payload. Ryan spinning left. He's one. Thank you, Mercy. Signal rock. Toward bottom left behind us. Torb half. Signal rock left side. Sig's low. No way.
No, third one.
God damn it. Fuck. I fed there. That Torb just like slid into our left and just stuck there. God damn it. I'm gonna feel it. My eyes are gonna be. Oh, okay. Torb's half. Signal rock top right. Morrow one. Torb setting up right side. Up top. Signal grasp. Nice. Bruh. Dude, this fucking Torb. I swear to God. Torb's low? Never mind. I'm backing up. This is what it sounded like. Shut up. Absolutely. I can read. That is not true. Where are we? What is happening? Who am I? Oh no. The cum. What the fuck? Torb's behind us? He's half? No way he lives. I'm so upset. Torb one, bottom right. I'm so upset. We're a half. Torb low. Christ.
How am I in the air? What the fuck?
Okay, the Torb's down. We're good, we're good. Ryan's anti. He's half. Can die. Nice spin. Huge. Or is low. They have Soldier now, no more Torb, we win. Fuck off. Balls on payload. Reading is overrated. So true. So true. So true. Who needs that shit anyway? Get your left side bottom. Ball bottom right. Balls on payload. Half. Ana in the air. No nade. She's low bottom left. She's one.
On your Ash, behind your Ash.
Big shatter. Huge. Ball one. Six anti. He's one. Huge sleep. Good shit. Thank you, Mom. I appreciate the support. Oh, Christ. Oh, okay. GG. Pillow diff.
True. Well played, guys.
Good job.
God. That was a good game. What fucking time is it? It's 6. Holy shit. God damn. Okay. Okay, yes, don't strain your eyes if they're tired. Don't, you know, just let them rest. It's okay. Bosses aren't going anywhere. Fuck. Jesus. Man, everything is so exciting right now. Cum shot, so true. Cum gaming. I need to make a cum gaming render in Blender. I want to do it. I want to do like a trendy like motion graphics type beat thing, like a gamer intro, but it says cum gaming. I really want to do that. And I'm also really excited for Blender 3. I support you, Troy, you know? If that is what your heart desires, you know, just go for it. I don't know if you can hear the sirens. That's completely unintentional timing. But maybe they're also on their way to, you know. We have Gio and Jopi in the voice chat, and no one else. Never mind. You're gonna save me from drowning. I get it. That's fine. Either way, Diva's fine. Whatever you prefer. I trust you with my life.
Oh, we trust you with our lives too.
That is a mistake on your end, but I'll do my best. They have a Junkrat.
I might swap soon.
What is that? Zarya Sig. Very interesting. Signal Rock. Doom's on the left side indoors. Signal Grasp. I'm pushing in. I'm on Doom. Interesting behavior from their Doom player, to be honest.
Did Sigma die?
I didn't see him die, but I didn't really see anything. I think he's still alive. Or he's left side, actually. After we cap, I'm gonna check here on the left. He might be here hiding.
I checked. No,
Oh.
it's not.
What the hell? Yeah, where did this Sigma go? What the fuck? Okay, he's up front. He's up front. I will not push this. That is a lot of damage. At the sig, no rock. He's one. Man. Sig, no grasp. I don't know, sleep. They have no nade. Big dragon. Pinning Zarya. Never mind. She's made of butter. Interesting.
Take damage.
Zen's close left side. Nice. Signal rock. They can't touch this. Signal rock. My shield's really weak. 6 half. Okay. That was 2 ults. And it's not working out for them somehow? Okay. Alright. Oh, okay. Well, now, alright, Zenyatta. Very cool. Nice. I don't know, sleep. Guys, I blocked the sleep. I heard the sleep and I raised my shield instead of just standing there and eating it with my mouth. Let's fucking go. Holy shit. We're evolving. Top 10 gaming moments.
Okay, I will grab this soon. Safe shield, safe shield.
Ryan's low, Ryan's 1. Never mind. Ryan's low. No way. No way. I thought it was in front of me. I thought it was in front of me. I wish I had peripheral vision. That would be so nice. Size of my hair. Spike the size of my hair and I get horns. Let's fucking go. Easy clap. Okay. Ryan's spitting me back. Oh. Hanzo's 1. I can't believe that the trap killed me. Very unfortunate gaming moment.
Just stay.
I don't know, this might be my only way to think about it. I think if it's a girl or woman, I'll still fight with them. It's a big fight with me. My friends shame me with that. What the fuck? Wait. What? I am so low. I take 2 swings and I'm like 1. Ryan's low. I don't know, sleep. How am I like in the air and asleep? Very cool. Very, very cool. Ooh. The hair grows so fast. I don't know. Most people don't get haircuts every 3 weeks.
I'm not really sure we can go with against double shield with rain with this spam.
Do you want me to go Sig?
Maybe go Sigma. There is like
okay.
They have shield.
I can switch after I shatter. I'm like 5 to it. Ryan's 1. Never mind, he got nanoed. Alright, fair enough. People like you about fighting rules in unprofessional environments if it's rules in random street fights. Take it from QWERTY. QWERTY fights rats on the daily. Nice block. Yeah, that wasn't very good. That wasn't very good. It's like I landed a shatter and I went in and I get slapped and like 6/2. My shield's weak. Big, 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 big. Sig 1. Rand shield very weak. Rand shield down. There's no fucking shot. God damn. Oh, yeah, bro, hell yeah. QWERTY is powerful.
This junk is a problem, team. Shoot the junk rat, not the shield.
So true. So true. Life philosophy.
Come right side.
Angelo.
Team, come here. You see where the tanks are. Come to the tanks. Don't stay in the open. No reason to stay.
My shield's down. Tanks in the air. Someone's bottom right. Hanzo bottom right. Hanzo bottom right. Close. No shot. What is happening? Okay. Sure. I don't know what's happening. I have no idea what the fuck just happened. Okay. Yeet. Junk bottom right. Supports right side as well.
Yeah.
Rand's on the left. My shield's weak, care. It's not weak, what am I saying? Signal rock. 6/2, 6/2. Zen right side. Zen 1. Zen 1. Tire left. The fuck? What the fuck? Oh, okay, he didn't touch. Alright. What is happening here? Take your friends too seriously? Not a boxing professional starts to fight with you? There is no rules? True. True. The kidnappers don't kick their kidnapped person. That is dishonorable. I would never resort to such underhanded street maneuvers. Man, life and death is life and death. Now, as young someone taught me to inflict greater damage to those who wish to inflict damage towards you. I like that. I like that advice. I like that advice. Big brain. Very big. But not too big, because if it's too big, that's more area where the enemy can inflict damage. You want to have a compact brain. Very wrinkly, you know? Wrinkles are where the wisdom hides, so if it's like a very wrinkly brain, you can hide a lot of stuff.
We can take this high ground, team. I think we should be fine here. You can always rotate there and to the point. Depends on the
A huge bottom on the cover of my head. That you know, it's the duality. This is very interesting. I've never played up here before. Are we actually like I can't?
Behind us to be somewhere. I don't know.
I think we should stay on point, team. I think we should stay on point.
Duck Redder, Lucio coming to you guys up top, watch out.
Oh, he's top left. Alright. Nice, nice. The hog is behind, hog is behind, hog is behind on our Zen. Lucio half?
Can you kill the on top?
What happened? What is this? Okay. Sim's half on the right.
Sim coming right side, she's half. They walk you there.
Oh, that's a big nade. They TP'd left. Sig's alone on points. No grasp. I'm actually throwing. I could have stopped that.
Reinhardt is after me like a madman.
Junk right side indoors. Sig one.
Ram low.
Ryan behind us.
Oh, healers, no healers.
Ryan's one. Junk's right side indoors.
Hey, come on, man. So, don't get sold. Listen. You guys get it.
What the fuck is this?
Flank around, guys. You have.
This is you? Yes, yes it is. Ryan's you weak? Signal grasp. They're behind. Ryan's pushing right side. Oh dear. Oh dear. I don't know, sleep. I don't one. Good God. I said I don't hold your like 2000. What the fuck? I don't know. I don't know, man. Mine. What? Junk right side?
There is just
Mine's half? What the? Huge. Oh, unfortunate.
You can't stop fire with that. You can't stop fire.
Like, I'm not a good player. I'm not, but I could tell what he was trying to do. Like, I was in disbelief. I was like, no way. He's not gonna do it, right? There's no way. Okay, that one I could have blocked that. Literally heard that shit, but dude. Signal grasp. Junk right side indoors, care.
Yeah.
Junk's one, top left. Nice. Let's fucking go. Christ. Okay. Oh, he did what I do. I woke him up. Unlucky.
Someone coming behind. I think Junk will.
Yeah, probably Junk. Yeah, he's here, bottom right.
He's here. He's somewhere here. He's somewhere.
He backed out for now. No, I thought he was gonna push. Top left, Ryan. He's half, he's one. Is that what I look like? Holy shit. No, that's not what I look like. I don't do that. I play bad, but I don't flank. Yee. Ryan's pushed up?
Okay, I might.
Never mind. The biggest bot in the Mullen, somehow I'm golds? There's always a bigger bot. Always a bigger bot. You're never the worst player in the world, no matter what your lobby tells you. There's always worse. What the fuck is happening? What? Hello? They have a TP, They're going top right, I think. TP is down. Oh, huge, massive. I don't know, sleep?
Yeah,
where the fuck did they go? Please carry me. I cannot carry shit. Yeet. What is is happening? Sig one. Top left, top left, top left. We'll say we traded. You know? We'll say we traded.
Oh, we can do it. Fight.
I baited the tire. I baited the tire. So I just thinking of random store with a dog leash.
Nice team, very nice.
Huge trade, stonks, you know? Stonks. This fucking map is so broken. Holy shit, no wonder so many fucking ults get lost. In this fucking place, Jesus. That's a Doomfist character. Doom behind, right? Never mind. I don't want. Sig on point. What the fuck is Signal Grasp? He's half? What was that?
Can probably touch, I'm not exactly sure though.
Yeah, they pushed.
I'm touching like a man, guys!
I'm the Ryan on a dog leash though.
Keep point.
I'm touching like a man, guys!
Give me your
I too love touching, man. So true. Top left Doom? What the fuck? I'm in pain. They have a Pharah, I'll be careful. Luke? Hello? Sig half, no grasp? Oh my god. Lucy's on point. Right side. Stop healing! Stop healing, dude! What the fuck? So rude, I'm like right in front of you. Stop healing. Hello, Diva.
There is a chunk somewhere, I'm not sure where.
I was touching like a man. Yeah. Why did you...
Yes, I'm stupid.
What did... Wait, did you stop? Why? The top left? No. Let's fucking go. Fair behind left. What the where am I? What the fuck? Lucy's half. Doom top left. Might come behind us. Never mind. Fair one. Right side. Doom bottom left. Never mind. Good job, guys. GG.
We'll play, guys. We'll play. Good game.
Because I don't want people to watch. No one's watching. It's okay. Don't worry. You're safe. Let's fucking go. Huge, massive gamer. Wait, I actually want to see this. What happened?
What is this game?
Beautiful. Zen carry. I miss playing Zen. I'm gonna play Zen. You know what, Troy? You're so fucking right. You're so fucking right. Okay. I'm glad you agree. Next to games. I'm glad you support me. Did you just punch it to death? Yes. Yes, I did. I cannot aim. Everything takes 30 years to die in a silo. So true. So true. So true. And yet, I'm still alive for all this time. I've had 0 instances of cardiac arrest. And I'm keeping my record strong. It'll take me 30 years to consider coming back to... That's sensible. That's sensible, you know? People will say you're better off without it. Oh, is it? Is it found? Are you sure about that? I'm bronze at hard. They don't want me to play Zen. They're trying to stop me. I mean, in reality, I'm probably not gonna be able to play Zen. I'm gonna have to like switch and play something else, like fucking. What do people play these days? BAP, probably, right? You one trick Zen? I used to. It's true. I used to. There it is. 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 Go back to your old habits, yeah. Are you serious? Twice in a row? Okay, there we go. Jesus Christ. Really? This is what you fucking do to me? Fucking Gibraltar. Man. I'm in pain. I'm in pain. Diamond, that's a glitch. Don't look at that. That's a glitch. This is a glitch. This isn't real. This isn't the real player. This is a bot. Don't worry about it. People skipping Q to stop you from playing floaty ball, man. So true. Who would want me as Zen in their team? Fucking horrifying idea, to be honest. Wait, who's... Oh, oof. Hello, team. Don't you Zen on my team? No, you don't. No, you don't. I don't think you want a Zen in your team, period. Torb is my dad. This is one of the enemy tank players. Very cool. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, bird hug.
See, Zen is strong, but only if your team can do damage. You can't rely on randoms. What do you mean if your team can do damage? You do damage. What the fuck? Why would I rely on my team for anything? Monkey discorded. Hog might be coming up top. Not yet, not yet. Zen discorded. Zen, Hog top right, no hook. He's backing out, no heal. Monkey discorded top right. Keeping it on him. He's half. Hog bottom right. No hook. Wow. What was that? I wish I could aim. I'm backing up. I might die here. Never mind. Zen's on pillow, discorded. Ana as well. Hog pushed up, left. He's one. Get you discorded. Soldier now, he's on fire, left side. I wish I could aim. Is that a peaceful bot? Absolutely fucking not. What is damage? It's when you die, you know? It's because you've received damage. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Wait, we're pushing, we're playing. Where are we? What is this? I see, yes. Yes. You know when you have a health bar and then you don't anymore? That's damage. What the fuck? Okay, just go to top left. Hog no hook. Top right, care. I'm dead. So you can only receive damage but not do it correct. Correct. That's very true. Very, very true. I don't know what's happening this game, to be honest with you. Did we grab that? I guess. Someone's in server room. It's Hog, I think. Hog discorded up top right. Keeping it on him. Get you discorded, top right. Keeping it on him. He's backing out. Get a bottom half. That's a lot of damage. Well, luckily, Flex Tape. Come gaming. Hog discorded. One. Nice. Oh, that's a Reinhardt now. Very interesting. Reinhardt, you weak. Get you discorded. Keeping it on him. He's going right indoors. Nice pick. Wow, Doomfist. Fun hero. Double. Hog discorded. Get you discorded. Nice hook. Tanks pushed up, tanks pushed up. Ryan discorded, keeping it on him. Oh dear, this was a mistake perhaps. I'm dropping. Or discorded. Ryan discorded. Reaper pushed up on payload. He's discorded one. Ryan pushed up, discorded half, one. Doomfist. He's not even in voice chat, you know, he's just playing Doomfist. I'm doing nothing this game. I'm literally just watching things come in and get one shot by Doomfist. I'm doing jack shit. I love this map. It's so like it's kind of restrictive, you know, and like because it forces you to play certain heroes like specifically. Like there's shit here that's just absolute fucking pain to play, like Reinhardt. Come from Carlson, I exist. Ah, you're also an European player then. I understand. I get that. When I started like talking, it's like when I started like talking in comp, it's like literally people will lose their minds for you doing like the bare minimum. I literally just say where things are and everyone's just like, oh my god. It's like the person's talking, you know? It's like game information, not just indistinct Russian yelling. You have a good face, Troy. You have an excellent face. Reaper discorded in the stairs. No Wraith. Nice, nice. Someone's behind us. The Rhine might be top? Yeah. Out of discorded, hog on point, no hook. He's right side, getting the mega. As you can hear Rhine thonk. You know, it was weird because like I couldn't tell which thonk it was. I was like, is that a diva? Is that a Rhine? It sounded like a tank, but I wasn't entirely sure. And then I saw like the outlines of his thick metal ass, and I was like, ah, okay, it's that guy. Twisted Lamp. The Rhine's discorded right now, left side close. Reaper on point behind, discorded. Nice hook. Discording Rhine. Rhine's one. Nice, good job guys, GG.
Yep.
Incredible, wow. Wow. Wait, do I actually have time for another one? Fucking hell. That was kind of a speed run, not gonna lie. Yeah, this guy just... Doomfist. Somebody's saying stuff in game chat and then fucking DPS kill things with the healer support. Backline. So true. So true. That's the typical experience for sure. Fuck it. We go again. One more. I need to get fucking shafted as Zen, and then I'll be like, yeah. I think I'll go back to tank maybe. As Doomfist. So true. So true. He exists, you know, and then you don't. Just as simple as that. The Doomfist exists, and then you don't. I like Doomfist. I respect that, you know? I respect that. I've gained, honestly, like I've gained, as much as I like to trash certain DPS characters, I've gained a lot of respect for people who play DPS. He exists and then you don't. Exactly. It's that simple. It's that simple. So true, bestie. So true, bestie. And like I'm on my team or on the enemy team. Still to play McCree because he's better. God, that was such an interesting thing that happened yesterday, I think. When I was playing DPS. And I was playing Genji. Because they had Ashe Hanzo. And they told me to switch to Kree. You just hear some shit sometimes. You just hear some shit. Who do I think? I think it was Zeph, right? I can't scroll back up enough to find it, I think. But it was probably Zeph. Yeah. Zeph came in here earlier, dropped 5. Didn't elaborate, and we love him. Back to watching What If Naruto. Wait, what? What is that? What if Naruto? What if Naruto? Is it a whole compilation? Oh, of like hypothetical... Is it literally like hypothetical scenarios involving Naruto? Like... What if Naruto wasn't an orphan? He was an orphan, right? I think. It's been a while. Enjoy, either way. What if Naruto kind of video? So what if Naruto was Goku Black's reincarnation? I understand most of those words like separated, but as a single sentence, they're a bit confusing. What if Naruto was Sakura? The ultimate question. Okay, fascinating pick. Very interesting, very interesting. Okay. Torb discorded, top left. There's a turret top left as well. Never mind. Sig discorded main. Shield down. Hog behind left, discorded. He's half. No heal. Torb pushed up. Torb on point. Discorded, half. 1, nice pin. Mercy discorded, right side. Widow's far bottom left. She's 1. If only I could aim, she would be dead. Oh, Hog discorded. Widow's still bottom left, be careful. She's behind the wall. Widow 1. There's no way she lives there. Widow top right in the window. Never mind. Mercy discorded. Unlucky. Unlucky. Naruto was not since the series 2, I think. It's an interesting question, for sure. Okay, let's fucking go. Ooh, dear. Window top right, I think. I don't discorded top left. Leave it discorded on point. On the top left. Adam is to top left still. She's hiding. Widow's top right. Never mind. Cool. I have no idea what she's saying. Interesting. Man. Man. Ooh, dear. No, she has the walls. What the fuck? Oh dear. Man, stop that. Cringe. Go on, Razor. Hog bottom right, discorded. I'm in so much pain. There's no way. God damn it. So this is my first time. I've never watched the Naruto. I can see if it's good or bad. I watched until I think I watched like, I don't know, 100 episodes or something. Oh dear. Oh dear. Mercy discorded. She's one. Ana now. No sleep. Widow's top right. She's still up there. Be careful. We're down to main heal. She's discorded. She backed out. Behind Diva. Discorded on point. Nice hook. Hawk top right. No heal. Mercy discorded. Diva behind still. Ana top left. Ana top left. Widow top right behind. Care. Interesting. Widow top right. Never mind, she dropped. Top left Widow, care. Mercy's with her. Oh, discorded bottom left. Ana bottom right. Man, I wish I could. Diva discorded up front. Diva discorded still, she's half. What an awkward place for me to be in. Hog discorded low, behind. He's one. Widow top left. Ah, stupid. I wasn't like strafing enough. I kind of just spammed crouch there, which is, you know, not really gonna help me a lot. Unfortunate. Hog discorded. He's half. With a top right. What? Okay. No way she lives there, right? Holy shit. The red killed our Orisa. No. RIP. Oh my god. Fascinating video game. I have Ashe on number Widow turret behind.
Half left side.
Ashe far right side in the window. Hog discorded. Diva discorded. Mercy discorded right side. Mercy pushing right. She's one.
What's low? What's dead?
Torb right. Torb one. Very unfortunate. They have a Sigma now. Damn. Okay, it's a good pick. That is the better pick for them. Udami heals, be careful. Baby Diva discorded. She's one. Bruh. Oh my god, she lives. She lives. Okay, okay. Bottom right Ashe indoors. 6 pushing, discorded. Nice hook, nice hook. Signal grasp. Signal rock. Ashe discorded on payload, right side. Nice sleep on the bomb. Signal grasp. Where the fuck? Ashe 1. Sig discorded. Torb left, Torb left, Torb left. Half.
1.
Nice, good job, guys. It's Kaworu. It's Kaworu. Most people don't know. Most people don't know, but yes, it's Kaworu. I have a plan to make all my emotes be different white-haired anime boys. So Kaworu was the first. I've been thinking about it more lately. I think I want Atsushi from, wait, was that his name? Atsushi? The protagonist from Bungo Stray Dogs? I think I want him with like a, you know, like a magnifying glass, because, you know, detective, right? Stop thinking about white-haired boys. Never. I love him. Me too. Me too. I literally watched Evangelion because I saw images of Kaworu and I was like, oh my god, I need to see who this is. I'm sure you could imagine how the experience went for me. But yeah, I'd probably also like a Razor emote. Who else?
5, 4, 3, 2.
Atsushi, Razor. Ooh, the fuck, what's his name? I forget his name, but from Tokyo Ghoul, not the protagonist, the one with the stitches. Hog no hook, right side. How does he hit that? Okay. Leave it discorded. She's half. Get you to deflect, discorded. Leave it now. She's half. She's one on payload. Widow top left, far. Sig discorded, no grasp. What the fuck? She's literally just standing there. My god. Unfortunate. You watching the immortal shit yet? The immortal shit. The immortal shit. Huh? The what? Oh, no. No. Listen, the only thing that I am like sad on watching right now is Pretty Boys Detective Club. And I still haven't finished it. Jesus Christ, the monkey got melted. Widow bottom right far. Oh, nice. Nice. No. Ah, if I hadn't dropped. Man, I fed there. That was so stupid of me. I shouldn't have dropped the touch. White-haired anime boy is so true. So true. But yes, fuck, I can't remember his name. Did you know what I'm talking about though? Like, I think he has like hair bands and scar? No, scars? Stitches. Leave it discorded. Nice pick. If it's still discorded. Oh my fucking god. Unfortunate. Ah, sorry, my bad. Widow stop right? Very unfortunate. Juzo, that's the one. That's the one. Kill away mode? I've never seen Hunter x Hunter. So I can't legally get a kill away mode. Oh dear. Take this cordon. The fuck? Very unfortunate. Get your Discord in. Get your main. Widow stop left. Nice pick. Save Discord in, save Discord in. Fucking hell. It's like 50 episodes to put the poster up of it? Of course. Put up the emotes whenever you the emotes, the posters whenever you want. Sig Discord in. He's half. Very unfortunate. Widow. Another fun character. Like Doomfist. Maxi frames are expensive. Who's saying GG? Our tank player. Interesting. Interesting. Very interesting. Maxi frame, a little maxi. I would assume it's like a big frame to put a poster in. By the name of it, at least. I was trying to think of more. But this is very difficult to multitask the brain for. Also, my eyes are like freaking out. Closer. I'm an old man. The posters I have are called maxi posters. I see. I see. Okay, cool. Wait, get you discorded. Have a Hanzo top left. Take discorded on point. Get you far left. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. You know? Very unfortunate. We doing end today? Yes, after this game. Which I feel like is not going to last much longer. Six is corded on point, he's half. He's one, get it behind, get it behind. Give it a corded, top right. Hanzo left. Fuck's sake. Give it a squatter behind, give it a squatter behind. Unfortunate. Is the Hanzo alive? Hanzo's still alive behind us, be careful. What the fuck is happening? Unlucky. Winnable. We just have to hold for 4 minutes. Like watch the dishes unless I cook dinner, then watch the dishes. So shall do a lurk. Good luck, Luke. Thank you for hanging out.
Sorry man, they just skidded on me. I can't do anything to this fight or to this Hanzo.
Don't break him. Yes. Good advice. Good advice. I see. Bastion's an interesting choice. Against the snipers, Genji Hog, Diva. You know? It's interesting. 5 minutes easy. True. True. So true. You win these. Absolutely. Always winnable. Even when you lose, it's winnable. Okay, wait. We have Bap. We have Mercy Zen. Okay. Some degrees of pain incoming, perhaps. It'll be the worst day of my life. I'm sure you've had worse. Did they also have a Bastion? Or am I high? Diva's going behind us, right side. Discorded, nice pick. Let's take Discorded. Keeping it on him. Diva's gonna be behind, be careful. Someone far top left, it's Widow, she's one. But it's still far top left. Signal grasp is scored in. Zen is scored in. He's one. Get it scored in. Going right side. Sig top right, discorded. No grasp. Sig discorded, Sig discorded. Keeping it on him. He stopped right. Still has it, no grasp. Get you discorded. He's half. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Ay, ay, ay. Oh well. A good try, I suppose. That fucking DPS player. Holy shit. What was this, dude? What? What is that? Wait. Huh? Sorry. Saw something in general chat. Like honestly, I shouldn't be looking at this because I know it's just gonna be sad. Man, if I could aim. He's straight up. What? How did we lose to this guy? What the fuck? Okay, no, I should have killed him. I should have killed him. I should have killed him. That's the truth. It's the truth. God. Anyway, time to close that out for YouTube. Hadn't done that in a good 2 weeks. Ah, Jesus. Ugh. Sorry, give me a second. Just checking some stuff. Oh yeah, and I was gonna play music, but I forgot I got the... It's not gonna be in the VOD. It's not gonna be in the VOD. So YouTube's just going to have to deal with me talking quietly, or like in silence. Very cool. Very fun. But you guys don't have to. I'm gonna bring the music back. God, I hate Windows. Actually, this isn't Windows' fault. This is mine for using the voice meter thing. Anyway. Hi. Anyone watching this on YouTube? Thank you for checking out the VOD. Unfortunately, we are moving into a recurring segment of stream where we watch memes shared within the community. And due to copyright reasons, I can't include that in the YouTube VOD or I'll get in trouble. So, yeah. Feel free to come by the stream while it's live on Twitch and also the Discord server where we have a channel where we share these memes. And, yeah. See you guys next time. Bye. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to actually